Chapter 16. Elizabeth and Jane return home. It was the second week in May when Jane, Elizabeth, and Maria set out from London together for Hertfordshire, and as they came near the small hotel where Mr. Bennet's carriage would meet them, they saw both Kitty and Lydia looking out of an upstairs room. These two girls had been in the place for more than an hour, happily employed in visiting a hat shop opposite and arranging a meal. After welcoming the sisters, they proudly pointed to a table laid out with cold meat, crying, "Isn't this nice? Isn't it a pleasant surprise?" "And we want all of you to be our guests," added Lydia. "But you must lend us the money because we have just spent hours at the shop over there." Then, showing the things that she had bought, "Look here, I've bought this hat. I don't think that it is very pretty, but I thought I might as well buy it as not. I shall pull it to pieces as soon as I get home and remake it." And when her sisters criticized it as ugly, she added, "It will not much matter what one wears it this summer, as the regiment is leaving Meryton in 2 weeks' time." "Are they, really?" cried Elizabeth with the greatest satisfaction. "Oh, they are going to be camped near Brighton, and I do so want our father to take us all there for the summer. Mother would like to go too, of all things." Yes, thought Elizabeth, that would be pleasant. Oh, heavens! Brighton and a whole campful of soldiers to us, who have been troubled enough already by one small regiment in the monthly dances at Meryton. "Now I have some news," said Lydia, as they sat down at the table. "It is excellent news about a person whom we all like." Jane and Elizabeth looked at each other, and the waiter was told that he need not stay. Lydia laughed and said, "Why must you always be so formal and correct? You thought that the waiter must not hear, as if he cared. But he is an ugly man. I am glad that he has gone. Well, well, but now for my news. It is about dear Wickham. There is no danger of his marrying Mary King. She has gone away. Wickham is safe." "And Mary King is safe," added Elizabeth. "Safe from a marriage which would be unwise in regard to fortune." As soon as everyone had eaten, and the older ones had paid, the carriage was ordered, and the whole party, with their boxes, needlework bags, and packages, and the unwelcome addition of all Kitty's and Lydia's shopping, were seated in it. "How nicely we are packed in!" cried Lydia. "Now let us be quite comfortable and talk and laugh all the way home. And in the first place, let us hear what has happened to you all since you went away. Have you seen any pleasant men? I was in great hopes that one of you would have got a husband before you came back. Jane is almost 23. How ashamed I should be of not being married before that age. Oh, how I should like to be married before any of you." In this noisy manner, with the help of Kitty, Lydia tried to amuse her companions all the way to Longbourn. Elizabeth listened as little as she could, but there was no escaping the frequent mention of Wickham's name. Their welcome home was most kind. Mrs. Bennet was glad to see Jane as beautiful as ever, and more than once Mr. Bennet said to Elizabeth, "I'm glad that you have come back, Lizzie." Their party was large, as almost all the Lucases came to meet Maria and hear the news. Lady Lucas was inquiring of Maria across the table after the health and housekeeping affairs of her oldest daughter. Mrs. Bennet was doubly engaged, on the one hand collecting an account of the present London fashions from Jane, who sat some way below her, and on the other repeating them all to the younger Miss Lucases. Lydia, in a voice rather louder than anyone else's, was describing the various pleasures of the morning to anybody who would listen to her. "Oh, Mary," she said, I wish you had gone with us. We had such fun. We talked and laughed so loudly that anybody might have heard us 10 miles away." To this Mary replied, "Do not think, my dear sister, that I scorn such pleasures, but I admit that they have no attraction for me. I would much prefer a book." But Lydia heard not a word of this answer. She rarely listened to anybody for more than half a minute, and never attended to Mary at all. In the afternoon, Lydia was anxious for the other girls to walk to Meryton, but Elizabeth steadily opposed the suggestion. It should not be said that the Misses Bennet could not be at home half a day before they were in search of their officers. She did not want to see Wickham again, and was determined to avoid doing so for as long as possible. Elizabeth's impatience to inform Jane of what had happened could no longer be controlled, and at last, having decided to keep back every detail with which her sister was concerned, and having warned her to be surprised, she described to her the next morning most of the scene between Mr. Darcy and herself. She then spoke of the letter, repeating all that it contained, which mentioned George Wickham. What a blow this was for poor Jane, who would willingly have gone through the world without believing that so much evil existed in the whole human race as was collected here in one person. "I do not know when I have been more shocked," she said. "Wickham so very bad. It is almost beyond belief. And poor Mr. Darcy. Oh, dear Lizzie, only consider what he must have suffered. Such a disappointment, and with the knowledge of your bad opinion too, and having to tell such a thing about his sister. There is one point on which I want your advice. I want to be told whether I ought or ought not to make known the truth about Wickham's character to our friends in general." Miss Bennet thought a little, and then replied, "Surely there can be no reason for shaming him so terribly. What is your own opinion?" "That it ought not to be attempted. Mr. Darcy has not given me permission to make his information public. At present I will say nothing about it." "You are quite right. It might ruin him for ever if his past became known. He is now perhaps sorry for what he has done, and anxious to improve." The confusion in Elizabeth's mind was relieved by this conversation. She had got rid of two of the secrets which had weighed on her for 2 weeks, and was certain of a willing listener in Jane whenever she might want to talk again of either. But she dared not tell the other half of Mr. Darcy's letter, nor explain to her sister how sincerely she had been valued by his friend. Here was knowledge which no one could share. She now had time to observe the real state of her sister's spirits. Jane was not happy. She still had very warm feelings for Bingley. "Well, Lizzie," said Mrs. Bennet one day, "what is your opinion now of this sad business of Jane's?" "I do not think that Mr. Bingley will ever live at Netherfield again." "Oh, well, it is just as he chooses. Well, my comfort is, I am sure that Jane will die of a broken heart, and then he will be sorry for what he has done." But as Elizabeth could not receive comfort from any such expectations, she did not answer. "Well, Lizzie," the mother continued soon afterwards, "and so the Collinses live very comfortably, do they? Charlotte is an excellent manager, I expect. If she is half as sharp as her mother, she is saving enough. And I suppose they often talk of having Longbourn when your father is dead. They look on it quite as their own, I dare say. I would be ashamed of owning somewhere that was left me on such unjust conditions.